The Global Quran, a dynamic comprehension, a human perspective. Chapter 36, Yasin, a certificate of excellence. Special credentials of Chapter 36. This chapter is a certificate of excellence for Prophet Muhammad for being an excellent human being. That's exactly what the word Yasin refers to. Due to this feature, many scholars have referred this chapter as the heart of the Quran. Moreover, it is metaphorically pondered as an accreditation that can be recited for every deceased human being, and seek pardon for their mistakes, and also for healing of the acutely ill. Introduction. This chapter acknowledges Prophet Muhammad as a scholar and a person with integrity, who suffers people's unethical, rather painful behaviors with patience. The chapter also highlights God's advice to him to demonstrate his knowledge of the past and of the philosophy of God's creations, particularly the creation of animals to render services for human beings, and creating coupling of living beings as well as of natural systems to set a balance. An important introduction made in this chapter is of an open source that records everything that occurs in this world, a kind of a CCTV camera. Scholars have different opinions about this source that will be discussed ahead. Now we see what this certification says. To the best human being, this Quran, full of wisdom, awards you the title of Yasin and testifies that you are conveying our message the best way, demonstrating an excellent character as a human being and as a messenger. This is exactly the strategy I, your compassionate God, would want my associates to adopt, to educate those whose ancestors were not educated this way. Please note that most of them would still behave like their ancestors, and won't trust you. They lack foresightedness, and are stubborn. They won't change no matter if you educate them with the finest methods. You can only educate those who have a tendency towards learning and thoughtfulness. Such people won't need to necessarily see God to believe you. They would think and apply analysis to discover the truth, and shall be rewarded for their efforts. Rest assured and let people know that we keep records of their deeds to determine their rewards or accountability. This would also determine the future of their descendants, who will take forward what they received from their ancestors. These records are secured within an open source that records every single deed performed by any person, and everything that exists or occurs in this world. To prove this to negators, you may express your knowledge reminding them about a town where we sent 2 messengers, then added a 3rd. People refuted them and called them with bad names. The messengers told them that they were only communicating a clear message, but people crossed their limits and killed them. Remind them how we penalized the killers, and we did not need to send troops to do that. A thunder was enough to blow them up and face consequences for what they did. For learners, you may present obvious evidence of our creations. For example, the earth. We turn it from dead to live, enabling it to produce crops for them. It also has date and grape gardens to obtain energy, food, and drinks, and water streams. All these blessings generate food as well as facilitate to earn their livings. They may even be more thankful to our virtuousness for creating pairs of every creation for a balanced world. They can see it within themselves and other living beings. This balance exists within things they may not even think of. For instance, the coupling of day and night. It's the absence of sunlight that creates the night, and its presence creates a day. The sun has another coupling, with the moon. While they are moving on their individual prescribed paths, they undergo a regular cycle. We have programmed their paths with vigor and logic. There is also a logic in the moon changing its shape, which looks like the bent branch of a date tree, then becomes a full moon, and finally returns to the same shape after traversing its trajectory. Neither the sun can capture the moon, nor the night can forego in a day. Every object keeps floating in its prescribed orbit. Please observe this diagram showing the couplings of Sun with the Earth and the Moon. The coupling of the Sun and Earth determine the first naturally existing unit of time, a day, and its subdivisions. Also, the proportion of light Earth starts its day with, and the same it ends with. The coupling of the Sun and Moon determine the second naturally existing unit of time, a month, as the proportion of light the Moon carries from the Sun in the beginning of a month is the same with which it ends its cycle, while its shape resembles the branch of a date tree without leaves. To assert the kindness of God even towards negators, the Prophet is advised to remind them how compassionate and supportive God has been towards their ancestors. Examples are given of a storm, when they were provided with vessels that carried them across rivers, and of creating animals that were their carriers on land and sources of food. It has been claimed that God could have avoided all that after their wrongdoings and leave them to die, but was kind enough to expand their lifespan in case they could realize the truth. A warning has been issued to those who don't believe accountability and refuse to share their supplies with the needy, saying, "Why should we feed those if God didn't feed them?" It has been contended that they are clearly asking for the final thunder. The Prophet is advised to ensure them that the thunder shall capture them, while they would be starving for worldly assets, and shall not give them a chance to secure their assets. When the whistle blows, they shall run towards God from their graves, asking who woke them up. That shall be the day promised to them, and they shall be assembled for investigation and accountability. No one shall face any oppression, and everyone shall get the right return of their investment. The awardees, on the other hand, have been guaranteed that they shall be enjoying their treats in soothing companies of their partners. The considerate God shall honor them for their deeds. The criminals shall be separated, though, for following the devil, while they were openly informed about enmity and misguidance, with a well-lit path to follow. It is argued that since they did not accept neither talk any logic, their accountability shall not be determined by questioning them any more. Their body parts shall be made to speak how they were used for bad purposes. To support the above argument, the Quran says, "We made eyes that can smartly see the right thing, and minds that can work appropriately to find the right pathways." Then comes a time, the old age, when the body becomes too fragile and vulnerable to function, like it was in its infancy. A life cycle like that of the moon, which is very simple, and they can clearly see it happening. This is no fiction. It has been further added that this Quran is not fictional at all, neither fiction is worth conveying for you as a messenger. It is a clear-cut guidance for those who have senses, and a warning for negators, who have created artificial gods to serve their interests. They should be embarrassed to ignore how we created them from tiny drops of fluid, and they mock about turning the collection of dead bones back to life. Tell them that the one who created their bones in the first place can do the other way round. They don't see even simpler examples of life cycles around them, like green trees that grow full of life, and eventually turn into fuel to light a fire. In the end, the chapter says, "Please don't be upset. Your Lord knows everything they do and think, and shall fix things you are worried about. All God needs is to intend for something to occur, and it complies. God is the absolute being who rules all over, and you shall return to." Snapshot of this chapter. Acknowledgement. God prefers demonstration of their message by character. Everything is recorded in an open source. Information. Examples from the past are important as evidence. General and scientific knowledge improves beliefs. Character. Dignity, patience. Extrapolations. Rewards for thinkers and followers of truth. Warnings for negators. Conclusion. This chapter provides some food for thought to recognize Prophet Muhammad as the most excellent human being, based on his comprehensive knowledge and his profound methodology to explain complicated ideas in simple ways. with ultimate patience to demonstrate a humble leadership. At times, the Prophet has been asked to demonstrate his knowledge about history as well as about the universal laws of physics that govern relative motion of Earth and extraterrestrial objects that are visible to people on Earth, and their cycles are evident to common man, like that of sun and moon and the appearance of day and night. It is important to note that, although the idea of Earth's rotation on its axis and around the sun was presented by the Greek astronomer Aristarchus of Samos 300 years BC, there had been more acceptance for Aristotle's theory of a planetary motion around a stationary Earth for almost 2,000 years. In the 16th century, a Polish astronomer, Nicholas Copernicus, conjectured for Earth's rotation around the sun, which established the idea of Earth's spin around its axis that explained the day and night cycle. This was demonstrated much later by a French astronomer, Leon Foucault, in 1851, via his famous pendulum revelation. Thus, it can be argued that the relationship of the appearance of day and night with Earth's rotation was an alien concept for the common man at the time of Prophet Mohammed. To explain the process as a natural phenomenon created by God, encompassing coupling of a life cycle, it was described using a simple terminology, the layman language of that time. Yet it can be seen that the coupling of day and night and that of sun and moon are described together. That compels today's reader to think whether these two couplings are linked, which is evident in modern times. There is another important piece of information in this chapter. It is about the existence of an open guide in every space-time that has information about the world and everything therein from all space-times. It is like an eternal CCTV camera that records everything that occurs. This open guide has been described in 3 ways by researchers so far. 1. The Quran, assuming nothing in this world can happen without getting command and instruction from the Quran. 2. A digital book, a folder that contains every incident and everyone's file with complete records. 3. A well-informed leader who was also the foremost scholar of his time, and on top of it, is readily accessible for consultation. Imam means leader, and Mubin means readily accessible. The first 2 ideas need a bit of thinking, as books alone are not enough to guide or educate about the knowledge, information therein. Otherwise, there was no need of educational institutions in general. A human element must be present to explain and, in particular, demonstrate the information in books, and that human must be knowledgeable enough to be entitled to be the right guide. Moreover, that leader must be readily accessible. Practically, the Quran requires a system, a cabinet, everywhere in this world, to guide about matters that exist within the particular region, according to God's guidelines in the Quran, and that system must be readily accessible to everyone, like city councils. Advising the Prophet to remind people about incidents in the past also asserts the 3rd point. It means either the open source was readily accessible to the Prophet, or he was the source himself. He knew the things that happened in the past, which people familiar with history could verify. It further appears that all information was fresh in his memory, with tiny details, and he could refer to anything straight away, as if he had watched videos of the entire past. Based on the above, it can also be asserted that the Quran requires such an open source to exist in all space-times and be readily accessible to everyone. This further supports the concept of a council to make decisions based on the Quran that must exist in every region. Some of the arguments made in this chapter can be easily proved. For example, it has been claimed that the disgraced, mentioned as followers of devil, shall not be questioned anymore for their crimes on the day of resurrection. Rather, their body parts shall speak of the bad deeds they performed. It can be seen many ways in current times. For instance, screening of bones, cells, blood and other body fluids help identify many crimes of the person in question, such as physical violence, alcohol and drug usage, and crossing of other legal or ethical boundaries that may cause fatal diseases like HIV/AIDS and a number of physical and mental health issues. Indeed, our body is a collection of cells, and each cell is the living being that carries information about the body. It depends on the skills how someone extracts information, what information is extracted, and how much. If we, the human beings, can do it using our contemporary knowledge with the help of technology, then we should be able to imagine how well the creator of this system can do the job without technology. As the second last verse of this chapter says, all God needs is to intend for something and ask it to occur, and it complies. References: Quran translation by Ali Kuli Karai. Quran translation by Dr. Niyaz Muhammad Hamadani. Balaghul Quran by Sheikh Mohsin Najafi. Blood Test for Crime Investigation by George Cairo. X-ray Techniques for Crime Investigation by D. Graham. Advanced Methods in Crime Investigation by Paula Gould. Surah Fatiha and Surah Yasin by Dr. Mustafa. The Heart of the Quran by Abdul Hussein Dastghed Shirazi. The First Idea of Earth's Rotation by James Evans. Demonstration of Earth's Rotation by Leon Foucault. Early Astronomy about Earth's Rotation by Dr. Sarah Salviendo. Surah Yasin by Muhammad Saeed Bamunpour. Imam al-Mubin by Heritage Society. Surah Yasin Explained by Dr. Niyaz Muhammad Hamadani. And Immune by Detmar.